I couldn't have predicted that my journey would lead me here. I'm Lena, 38 years old, and my husband Victor is a thriving businessman. His days are filled with work, either on extended business trips or in endless meetings. His eyes glued to his phone or computer screens. I've always been supportive, understanding the stress he carries. However, each time he leaves or dives into his work, I'm left with an odd sense of emptiness and solitude. We have a son named Ethan, who is now 20. Ethan values his freedom and, after 2 years of college, decided to leave school to work. Despite our financial stability, he chose to work at a nearby grocery store, usually returning home around midday to rest. This summer was exceptionally hot, the heat seeming to invade every corner of the house. One ordinary day, Victor left early for work, and the house fell silent as the door closed behind him. Ethan was working his morning shift and would typically return around noon. The sun blazed overhead, its intense heat making the entire yard shimmer. I sat by the window, gazing out sadly, when I heard footsteps signaling Ethan's return. He walked in, sweat dripping down his forehead, his t-shirt clinging to his body. "Mom, it's so hot today," Ethan said, placing a bag of snacks on the kitchen table. I smiled, watching my grown son, my heart filled with indescribable emotions. Ethan grabbed a bottle of cold water from the refrigerator and sat down on an old wooden chair. The room fell silent again, filled only with the steady hum of the ceiling fan and the sound of water droplets falling from the bottle onto the floor. We sat quietly, each lost in our thoughts, the summer heat overwhelming. That afternoon, the heat became unbearable, so I decided to take a shower to cool off. As I approached the bathroom, I heard the sound of running water. I took a few more steps and realized the bathroom door was slightly open, revealing a small gap through which a faint light shone. Before me stood Ethan, naked under the stream of water. Although I was his mother, this scene made my heart race, pounding as if it might leap out of my chest. Frozen, I didn't know what to do. Ethan was absorbed in his shower, unaware of my presence. The warmth in my body wasn't just from the weather. Something inexplicable was rising within me, filling my heart. I couldn't explain my thoughts at that moment, only knowing that the confusion and embarrassment made me want to leave quickly before being discovered. But as I stepped back, I accidentally knocked over a nearby mop, causing it to fall with a loud noise. Panicked, my heart tightened, and I quickly ran back to the living room, hoping Ethan wouldn't notice. Sitting down, I felt my heart still pounding, my breathing rapid, and my whole body trembling as if I had just escaped a dangerous situation. The sound of the mop falling echoed in my head, making me afraid that Ethan would remember or notice something unusual. However, the house remained quiet, with no sound of footsteps from the bathroom. I tried to calm myself, but the turmoil inside wouldn't subside. The image of Ethan, naked, still appeared clearly and hauntingly in my mind. I don't know why, but that moment seemed to awaken something deep inside that I had long tried to ignore. The feeling of shame and guilt mixed together made me both confused and worried. I stood up and paced the living room, trying to push the image out of my mind, but it stubbornly returned, haunting me and making me uneasy. The sound of water in the bathroom stopped, and just a few minutes later, Ethan walked out, wrapped only in a towel, drops of water glistening down his strong shoulders. I glanced at him quickly, then turned away, deliberately avoiding Ethan's eyes, but I couldn't hide the confusion in my heart. Ethan looked at me for a moment, then smiled slightly. "Mom, did you hear something? I think something just fell." I tried to keep my voice as normal as possible, even though it shook slightly. Mom dropped the mop. It's okay." After saying that, I clearly felt the vibration in my words, quickly turning my face away to hide my anxiety and embarrassment. Ethan shrugged, then quietly walked back to his room, closing the door behind him. The house once again fell into a stifling silence, but my mind was not at ease. The feeling of heat in my body, combined with the summer heat and the haunting image of Ethan, made me feel stuck between reality and chaotic thoughts that should not exist. I sat down, holding my head in my hands, trying to dispel the images that kept lingering in my mind. "Lena, what are you doing?" I blamed myself, my inner voice filled with fear and shame. Though I tried to calm myself, since that day, my eyes toward Ethan were no longer the same. I didn't understand why, and even more so, I didn't know how to escape this vortex of confusing emotions. Time flew by, and the next morning began with the same rhythm. Victor, as usual, sat down to eat breakfast hurriedly, his eyes focused on his phone, checking every email and message. I quietly set the table for breakfast, trying to keep my face calm despite the sadness that silently rose when he announced his upcoming long business trip, expected to last a whole week. Even though I was used to Victor's busy lifestyle, every time he announced his departure, my heart couldn't help but sink, a feeling of emptiness spreading inside me like darkness. "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything at home after this business trip," Victor said in a hurried voice, forcing a smile before standing up and leaving the house. The sound of the door closing echoed, leaving the space to fall into a vague silence. Ethan sat across from me, gently stirring the cup of coffee in front of him, his eyes tired and thoughtful. When Victor was gone, Ethan looked up, his eyes searching for sympathy. "Mom, I have a week off from the shop. How about we go on a trip? It's been a long time since we've been out together as a family." I smiled sadly and shook my head, a hint of regret flashing in my eyes. "Your dad is very busy. He's on a business trip for a whole week this time." I couldn't help but notice that Ethan's eyes were slightly sad, his lips pursed as if he was trying to hold back something. He didn't say anything more, just nodded slightly, then stood up to clean up the dishes on the table. I could clearly feel Ethan's longing for a real family trip, with no more moments associated with work and distance. After breakfast, the house was left with just the two of us. I wondered how long it had been since I had the chance to sit down and really listen to Ethan, his thoughts, feelings, and dreams. Life had swept us both into busy cycles, not allowing us to stop and look deeply into each other's eyes. We sat in the living room, the cool breeze from outside blowing in through the half-open window, bringing with it a bit of fresh air. Soft sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting warm streaks of light on the carpet underfoot. "Mom, I have a lot to tell you," Ethan said, his voice much deeper and more mature than before. "Whatever it is, just tell me." "I'm listening," I smiled, my eyes gentle as I looked at him, encouraging him. He began to tell stories about everyday life, work at the shop, funny customers, and unexpected situations that made him laugh. I listened attentively, feeling like I had found a part of the connection that had gradually faded over the years. Ethan's eyes flashed with joy as he recalled memorable moments, making my heart feel strangely warm. Time passed quickly, and I realized that I was truly immersed in the conversation, as if all the distance between us had disappeared in this happy moment. I teased him, "You're so big. Have you thought about having a girlfriend?" "Mom, I see many girls in the neighborhood staring at me every time I pass by." Ethan laughed loudly, his eyes sparkling with joy. "Mom, let's talk about that slowly. I still want to focus on work first," he said, his tone both joking and sincere. We continued chatting, recalling warm old memories, the times the whole family went on picnics when Ethan was little, or when he was naughty and got scolded by Victor and me, then the whole family burst out laughing. The air in the room filled with lively stories as if time had turned back to those happy days. Time passed quickly, and the noon sunlight shone more strongly through the window, making the room brighter and warmer. I felt my heart lighten, as if the invisible distance between Ethan and me had been filled with love and understanding. A moment of silence passed. The clock showed that it was almost noon. Both mother and son gradually fell silent, each immersed in their own private thoughts. But the atmosphere between us had changed, warmer, closer, and more peaceful than ever. Suddenly, Ethan looked straight into my eyes and asked a question that left me speechless, not knowing how to answer. "Mom, did you watch me take a bath yesterday?" My heart pounded, my face turning as red as fire when I heard that question, my mouth dry, unable to utter a word. Ethan looked at me intently, his eyes shining with curiosity mixed with patience, as if waiting for an answer, not giving me too much time to think. "Actually, yesterday I knew you were watching, but I just pretended not to know." Hearing that confession, my heart felt like someone was squeezing it, both embarrassed and worried. Chaotic thoughts swirled in my mind. Ethan knew, so why did he keep silent until now? I tried to open my mouth to speak, but every word seemed stuck in my throat. Our eyes met, and I felt something strange and indescribable pass between us. Just as I was about to speak, Ethan suddenly spoke up, breaking the awkward silence. "Mom, I like you." Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. I like you, not like a mother and son, but like a lover. Ethan's sudden confession stunned me. All the emotions mixed in my heart: surprise, worry, and something hard to name. My heart stopped beating for a moment. His eyes did not leave me. Those eyes contained not only seriousness, but also a vague hope. I was silent, not knowing how to face the truth that had just been revealed. My heart fluttered, and I found it difficult to describe as Ethan's words lingered in my ears. Mom, you asked me if I wanted a girlfriend, but in my heart, I only wanted you. I felt my chest tighten, my heart pounding. I hadn't experienced this feeling for a long time. I was surprised, confused, trying to find words in my chaotic thoughts, but was met with silence. Ethan sat close, his eyes very worried and tender, as if reading my inner turmoil. My heart ached between self-reproachful questions. How could I feel like this when I had not been close to anyone for so long? Did I deserve to feel fragile and young again? Are you serious? I asked hastily, throwing the words through trembling eyelashes. But Ethan did not respond. Instead, he took my hand, warm as the heart of spring. I felt the softness in Ethan's eyes, making all my thoughts suddenly disappear. Ethan pulled me into his embrace, his arms wrapped tightly around me, as if holding me back from my worries. The sound of his heartbeat was like a coppery mist in his chest, and his breath warmed my ears. I just want you. That whispered sentence still surrounded me like silk and mist. Ethan's lips were close. I felt my heart somersault in my chest. In that moment, I knew that no answer could express my feelings as clearly as Ethan's embrace. From that moment on, when Ethan and I first gave ourselves to each other, all boundaries seemed to disappear. We held back no reservations and lost ourselves in each other's arms, as if the outside world did not exist. From that day on, a secret was formed between us, a clandestine and dangerous relationship. Every time Victor was away, the normally quiet house became a place of intense undercurrents. Ethan's gaze on me seemed to ignite all suspicion, and I could not resist that inexplicable attraction. The thrill of the door closing, the sound of each cautious footstep, and the hasty embrace felt like we were afraid the world would see us. Deep down, we both knew that this relationship should not exist, that it could only lead to pain. But despite everything, we still rushed into each other's arms against all reason, like moths drawn to a forbidden light. In those furtive moments, I did not think of the consequences or the reproaches. I only knew that for Ethan, the prohibition became more attractive than ever. But every secret has its expiration date, and deep down, I know that one day the truth will be revealed and take away everything we are holding on to. Ethan and I continue our lives in a tug of war between emotion and reason. Every time we face each other, embarrassment and invisible desire always creep into our eyes. Our accidental touches, that inner conflict torments me every day. But I still cannot stop. We share moments that we both know should not exist, moments full of emotion but also filled with guilt. One afternoon, Victor unexpectedly came home earlier than expected. The sound of the car stopping in the yard and the sound of the key in the door lock made me stunned, a feeling of fear rising. Ethan and I just managed to separate, both of our eyes confused and anxious. Victor walked in, his face tired but his eyes searching. He looked at me and Ethan, a little suspicious, but said nothing. The atmosphere in the room was tense, like a string about to break. I knew things couldn't go on like this. The tension between the three of us was suffocating. I had to face the fact that I needed to end this wrong relationship before things became irreparable. One evening, I called Ethan out onto the porch. The dim light fell on his face, his eyes filled with emotion. "We can't go on like this, Ethan," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I love you like a son, and that's the right thing to do. Anything else would only bring pain." Ethan fell silent, his eyes on the ground, sadness spreading across his face. Finally, he nodded, his shoulders slumping as if a heavy burden had been lifted. Our relationship ended quietly, but in both of our hearts, the pain remained. Victor still didn't know what had happened. I decided to spend more time with my family to repair what was broken inside me and rebuild trust. Ethan left home for a while to find balance and start a new life. I realized that sometimes loneliness and the longing for affection can make people do wrong things. The biggest lesson I learned was sincerity and the courage to face your own feelings. To protect what is truly important, you need to let go of what should not be held onto. The end leaves a bit of regret and reflection, but also the beginning of healing and moving on. After all that I've been through, I want to share some reflections with those who may be facing similar challenges or emotions. What I learned is to know yourself and face loneliness. There was a time when I felt trapped in loneliness and emptiness. Instead of looking for comfort in the wrong places, I realized that I needed to learn to face those emotions, ask myself why I felt that way, and work to address the root cause. Maintain boundaries and respect your self worth when dealing with difficult emotions. I realized that maintaining boundaries in relationships is extremely important. Respect for yourself and others helps prevent mistakes that you may later regret. Communication and connection are key. If you feel lonely in your relationship, initiate communication. Sometimes just having an honest conversation can help clear up misunderstandings and bring about connection. Forgive yourself and learn to grow. I made mistakes, and the hardest part is facing regret. However, I realize that beating yourself up only makes things worse. Learning to forgive yourself is the first step to healing and moving forward. Cherish the relationships that really matter. Ultimately, I learned that nothing is more precious than love and connection with people who truly care about you. Don't let fleeting emotions make you lose it. If you are experiencing confusion, disorientation, or any conflict within yourself, take a moment to reflect, face yourself, and choose the right path. I have learned that strength is not only about standing firm, but also knowing when to stop. When I reflect on that summer, I can't help but feel a mix of regret and nostalgia. My name is Logan, and what transpired between me and my Aunt Sophia was something I never planned or anticipated. It was a whirlwind of emotions, temptation, and decisions that have left a permanent mark on both of our lives. Sophia was my mother's younger sister, but with just a 17-year gap between us, she often felt more like a distant cousin. At 41, Sophia was effortlessly beautiful in a quiet, understated way. Her soft chestnut hair framed her face in waves, and her hazel eyes had this captivating way of looking at you as if they could see the parts of yourself. You weren't eager to stay with her, but she lived alone in a charming little house just outside the city, having parted ways with her husband, Michael, a few years ago. When my parents suggested I spend the summer with her after finishing my graduate program, I was hesitant. I barely knew her and felt uneasy about intruding on her solitude, but they insisted, saying it would be good for me, so I reluctantly packed my bags and drove to her peaceful retreat. Sophia greeted me warmly, pulling me into a hug that smelled faintly of lavender and vanilla. Her home was just as I remembered, cozy, filled with books, art supplies, and a sense of tranquility that made you want to stay. She led me to the guest room, offered me tea, and we spent the first evening catching up. Initially, things were uneventful. Sophia worked during the day, leaving me to my own devices. I explored the nearby trails, read a few of the books she had lying around, and tried to shake off the uncertainty weighing on me after finishing my program. But the more time I spent with her, the more I began to notice things I hadn't before. How she hummed while cooking, how her laughter could light up a room, and the effortless grace with which she carried herself. One evening, everything changed. I couldn't sleep. The summer heat kept me restless. So, I went outside to cool off. As I walked past Sophia's bedroom window, I noticed the curtains were slightly open, and the soft light of her bedside lamp spilled onto the lawn. I paused, my eyes drawn to the sight inside. Sophia was lying on her bed, scrolling through her phone. She wore a silk robe that clung to her body in a way that was both elegant and casual, slipping slightly off one shoulder. Beneath it, I caught a glimpse of her lace-trimmed bra and her bare legs stretched comfortably. There was an intimate air about her, a side of her I had never seen before. I should have walked away, but I was transfixed. I knew I was intruding, but I couldn't look away. I ducked behind the hedge, my heart racing with guilt and adrenaline. When I peeked again, she was unaware of my presence. The next day, I couldn't get the image of her out of my head. It wasn't just her appearance, it was the vulnerability and intimacy of the moment that had stayed with me. That evening, as she sat reading in the living room, I found myself watching her more intently. "Everything okay?" she asked, looking up from her book. "Yeah," I said quickly, forcing a smile. "Just tired." She nodded, her gaze lingering on me for a moment before she returned to her book. That night, the tension was too much, and I found myself standing outside her bedroom door. I knocked softly, my heart pounding. "Coming in," she called. I stepped inside, trying to act casual. She was sitting up in bed, her robe loosely tied. Can't sleep? She asked with a small smile. I shook my head and sat on the edge of her bed. I thought I'd check on you, make sure you're okay. Her smile softened. That's sweet, but I'm fine, she said, reaching out to touch my hand. The touch lingered, and the air between us was charged with an unspoken tension. Slowly, she tilted her head, her eyes searching mine. Before I knew it, I leaned in, our lips brushing softly. The kiss was hesitant at first, but soon deepened. A flood of emotions that neither of us could hold back. It was electric, suspended in time, but fleeting as our lips parted. Reality rushed back. Sophia pulled back slightly, her hand lingering on my cheek, her eyes wide with disbelief and longing. Logan, she whispered, what are we doing? I didn't have an answer, only that the pull between us felt undeniable, something neither of us could suppress. I don't know, I whispered, but it feels right. She shook her head, a small, conflicted smile playing on her lips. This is dangerous. You're my nephew, and I gently countered, not just my aunt. You're more than that, and you know it. For a moment, silence hung between us, heavy with unspoken words. Her hazel eyes glistened with unshed tears, and I could see the battle raging inside her between what she thought was right and what she wanted. Her breath was uneven, as if she was struggling to find the words to push me away, to justify what she was feeling. You're Sophia, I said softly, stepping closer. You're not defined by a title or a role. You're an extraordinary person. Her lips quivered, and for a brief moment, she closed her eyes, trying to block out my words, my presence. But something in her shifted. She opened her eyes, looking at me with an intensity that sent a shiver through me. This is wrong, she whispered. Is it? I asked gently. Or is it wrong just because we've been taught to think it is? Sophia turned away, her arms hugging herself as though trying to protect her heart. You don't understand, she said. I've spent my whole life trying to do what was expected, and look where it's gotten me. Her voice broke, and she looked down. Alone, invisible, forgotten. You're not invisible to me, I said, my voice steady even as my heart raced. You're the most incredible person I've ever known, and you deserve to be seen, to be loved for who you are. She turned back to me, her eyes searching mine as though seeking an answer to a question she couldn't voice. But how? She murmured. How can this be anything but a mistake? By letting it be real, I said, stepping closer until we were inches apart. By choosing to feel. The space between us dissolved as she let out a shaky breath. Slowly, hesitantly, I brushed a stray lock of hair from her face. She didn't pull away. Instead, she closed her eyes, leaning into the touch as if it was the first gesture of care she had felt in years. Her lips parted slightly, and before I could hesitate, I leaned in and kissed her forehead. It was a simple gesture, but one that carried so much meaning. Her body trembled beneath my touch, and when I pulled back, her eyes were wide and full of emotion. Sophia, she began, her voice trembling. Tell me to stop, and I will. She didn't answer right away. Then slowly, she shook her head. I don't want you to stop. The kiss that followed was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It began tentatively, as though we were both testing the fragile boundaries of the moment. But as our lips met, the hesitation faded, replaced by a passion that neither of us could deny. Her hands moved to my shoulders, gripping me as if I were her anchor, and I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her closer. When we finally broke apart, her cheeks were flushed, and her breath was ragged. This changes everything, she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. Maybe, I admitted. But maybe that's okay. She searched my eyes, looking for reassurance. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to let myself feel this way. You don't have to have all the answers right now, I said softly, holding her hand. We'll figure it out together. As the days passed, our connection deepened in ways I had never imagined. But with it came a growing sense of unease. The shadow of our situation loomed over us, threatening to tear apart the fragile bond we had created. Sophia's husband, Michael, my uncle, was distant and absorbed in his business. But knowing she was still married weighed heavily on both of us. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, the silence between us was thick with unspoken words. Sophia finally broke it. "Logan, I can't keep doing this," she said, her voice heavy with guilt. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not." I reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. "Then don't," I said. "You deserve more than this, more than being an afterthought in your own life." Tears welled in her eyes. "But what if I don't know how to leave?" "You don't have to do it alone," I said firmly. "I'll be here for you every step of the way." The next day, tension hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. I found myself looking out the window toward Sophia's house, unable to focus on anything else. The weight of our shared moments still lingered in my mind. Her trembling hands, the way her voice cracked when she said she didn't want me to stop. By mid-afternoon, I couldn't wait any longer. I walked down the familiar path to her house, my steps slow and deliberate. Sophia was sitting on a weathered bench in the garden beneath the shade of a large oak tree, her phone lying untouched beside her. She stared off into the distance, lost in thought. "Sophia?" I called softly as I approached. She startled, her gaze snapping to mine. "Logan," she said, her voice a mix of surprise and something else. Relief, perhaps. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to check on you," I said, my voice steady even though my heart raced. "After yesterday, I just wanted to make sure you were okay." She gave a shaky laugh. "Okay?" I don't even know what that means anymore. "Let me help you figure it out," I said, sitting down beside her. "You don't have to do this alone." She hesitated, her fingers twisting together in her lap. "I don't even know where to begin," she confessed. "Everything feels so tangled, like no matter what I do, someone will get hurt." "Maybe it's not about avoiding the pain," I said gently. "Maybe it's about deciding what matters most and being willing to fight for it." Sophia looked at me, her hazel eyes filled with uncertainty and longing. "And what if what matters most feels impossible?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Then we make it possible," I said, reaching out to take her hand in mine. "One step at a time." Her grip tightened on my hand, and for a moment, it felt like she was about to pull away. But then she let out a long, shaky breath and leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder. "Do you ever feel like you've spent your whole life being what other people expect you to be?" she asked softly. "Like you've lost sight of who you are?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "But being here with you, it feels like I'm starting to figure it out." She tilted her head to look at me, vulnerability and hope in her expression. "You make it sound so simple. It's not," I said. "But it's worth it." For a long moment, we sat in silence, the weight of her unspoken thoughts pressing down on us. Finally, she spoke again, her voice barely audible. "I've spent so many years pretending to be happy, smiling at parties, hosting dinners, laughing at jokes I didn't find funny. And all the while, I felt hollow." "You don't have to pretend with me," I said firmly. "You can be yourself, completely unapologetically." Her eyes glistened with tears, and she reached up to touch my face, her touch soft and tentative. "Why are you doing this, Logan?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why do you care so much?" "Because you deserve to be cared for," I said. "To be seen, to be loved for who you are." Sophia's hand lingered on my cheek, her thumb brushing gently against my skin. Slowly, hesitantly, she leaned in, her lips brushing mine in a kiss that was both tender and electrifying. The world around us seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of us connected in a way that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. When we finally pulled apart, her cheeks were flushed, her breath uneven. "This is crazy," she murmured, a shaky laugh escaping her lips. "What are we even doing?" "Something that feels right," I said, my voice steady despite the rapid beating of my heart. "Something that matters." She searched my eyes as though trying to make sense of this illogical moment. "Logan," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "I don't know if I can do this. If I can let myself have this." "You don't have to have all the answers right now," I said. "We'll figure it out together, one step at a time." Before she could respond, the sharp trill of her phone interrupted the quiet. Sophia flinched, her hand darting to the device almost as if it had burned her. She glanced at the screen, her expression tightening when she saw the caller ID. "It's him," she said softly, frustration and resignation in her voice. Do you want to answer it? I asked carefully. She hesitated for a moment before shaking her head. No, she said firmly, setting the phone face down on the table. Not right now. I nodded, a surge of admiration swelling in my chest. You're stronger than you think, I said. Don't let him take that from you. Her gaze softened, and she reached out to take my hand once again. Thank you, Logan, she said, for being here, for being you. After those words, her hand lingered in mine, and time seemed to slow. We sat there, the garden around us quiet except for the soft rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. Her fingers tightened around mine, a wordless connection that spoke volumes. I could feel her pulse under my touch, steady but quickening ever so slightly. Her breath was shallow but deepening, mirroring the racing thoughts in her mind. Sophia, I whispered, unable to hold back the words that had been swirling in my chest. I don't want this to just be a moment. I want to be here for you every step of the way. No more hiding, no more pretending. She looked at me, her eyes full of intensity as if weighing my words and the promise they carried. I don't know what to do with this, Logan, she whispered, her vulnerability almost breaking me. I've spent so many years afraid of what I might feel, of what might happen if I let myself truly want something. But with you, I feel like I can finally breathe. I leaned forward, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, my fingers grazing her soft skin. Then don't be afraid, I said. Let's figure this out together. Whatever happens, we'll face it as one. She hesitated, the weight of everything she had lived through in her marriage pressing down on her. But slowly, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. We'll take it one day at a time. And that was it. The moment we had shared was a beginning, not an end. The kiss, the closeness, the unspoken understanding between us, it was just the start of something deeper, something real. She didn't need to say more, neither did I. What we had, what we were beginning to build, was enough. Over the next few weeks, Sophia and I grew closer. We took things slow, respecting each other's pace, but the connection between us was undeniable. We spent quiet mornings over coffee, walks through the garden, and late-night talks about the future. With each passing day, the weight of the past seemed to loosen its grip on her, allowing her to embrace a new version of herself. A version that allowed her to want more, to finally accept the love that had been in front of her all along. The greatest change, though, was in her. The guarded woman I had first met, someone hiding behind walls built over years, was no longer there. In her place was someone freer, unburdened by the past, ready to face whatever came next. And it was in these quiet moments, in the spaces between our words, that I realized that I didn't just care for her, I loved her. It wasn't easy. Nothing worth having ever is. There were still hard conversations, moments of doubt, and pressures from outside forces. Sophia's marriage, her distant relationship with Michael, and the guilt she felt didn't just disappear overnight. But the love we shared was undeniable, and we found strength in each other. Sophia never returned to the life she had known, and neither did I. We built something new, something ours, based on trust, honesty, and the promise to always stand by each other. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And for the first time in a long time, both of us were content with that. As the seasons changed and the years passed, we continued to grow together. We faced challenges, but always together. And whenever the world seemed overwhelming, when the pressures of everything outside threatened to tear us apart, we would look back at that evening in the garden, the moment we made a promise to each other, not of perfection, but of authenticity, of love, and of a future worth fighting for. And so, Sophia and I, two people from different lives with different stories, had found a way to write a new one filled with hope, love, and the unshakable belief that even the hardest paths can lead to the most beautiful destinations. And in the end, that was all that mattered.